All right, so there we go. Okay, so start talking about Title IX today. So what do you guys know about Title IX? Can anybody just give me a real short, you can either unmute yourself or you can type it in the chat. What do you know about Title IX? Anybody? I'll give y'all just a minute. And don't look at the screen and then say what that is. What do you know about it just from what you have heard in the past? Anything? Anyone? Okay. So, well, Title IX basically allows or disallows any sort of gender discrimination. So this is basically what the Title IX Amendment from 1972 states. No person in the United States shall, on the basis of sex, be excluded from participation and be denied the benefits or subject to discrimination. So basically that means that you cannot be discriminated against. So if you ever feel like you are being discriminated against, then you can pull up Title IX and use that as your defense. So what does that really look like? So here are the 9 things that you need to know about Title IX. So first, it's a civil right. Everybody, let me see if anybody's unmuted. Okay, we need to mute everyone or it gives me. Hold on just a minute. All right, that should be better. Okay, so it's a civil right. Again, sex discrimination, it applies to all students regardless of gender identity. So that's a big one as we're looking at gender identity and people are trying to discover exactly what their gender identity is. So I think Title IX has been called into question quite a lot as we're looking across college campuses and how services are being rendered to various students and what that looks like. They can't be, if somebody is filing a complaint, they can't be, there can't be any sort of retaliatory effects against them. You have to make sure that the campus is safe from sex discrimination. I mean, obviously you can read these are the big 9. And so basically what we want you to know about this is that you have these rights. And so if at any point in time during your educational career, you feel like these rights are being violated, then you have the right to post a complaint. And if you do post a complaint, then you also have the right to not have any sort of retaliatory effects from that. Does anybody have any questions about that? Let me get into the chat. I can't always see it whenever I share my screen. All right. Sorry, my husband's just leaving for work. So anyway, so that's kind of what we want you to know about Title IX. I'm going to be posting some other information on Moodle about this. I'll post this article up there, so if you do want to read about it, then you can. I do encourage you all just to have a general knowledge of what Title IX looks like. Not all schools are the same. There is supposed to be a procedure for dealing with Title IX issues. I know at App State we have a Title IX compliance officer. So that's pretty big on campuses. All right, so let's go back to where we were. All right. Sure, okay. All right, guys, so now then we've kind of talked about Title IX for 5 minutes, and that's about all the information we needed on that. So let's talk about a few things here in Chapter 2. Hopefully a lot of this, some of you kind of have an idea about. There are a few things that I just wanted to talk about with regard to some of the highlights in here. One of the things that I did want to talk about is instructional delivery methods. I've taught quite a few classes, both online and seated. And so I just want to give you some caution to online classes. Depending on the instructor, it may be more of a seated class through online, kind of like what we're doing here. Whenever I did my EDS, it was online, but it was very much called asynchronous. And so I had to be in class every Monday. I think it was Monday, Wednesday from like 6 to 9. And by in class, it means sitting physically in my house in class, but they still called that an online class. Not quite what I thought of whenever I thought of online. So just be aware whenever you're taking an online class exactly what those parameters look like and what the instructor is expecting out of you. Also, a lot of times online classes have a testing requirement where you have to actually go to the campus to take the test. Now, I know whenever I worked at Caldwell, we had students who would be taking classes online through Caldwell, but they might be in Raleigh. And so we would work with Wake Tech or NC State so that the student could go take the test there at their testing center. So just kind of be aware of online classes. Also, a lot of online classes are kind of self-paced. I know whenever I do mine, I put an assignment in each week and then just expect it to be done. I don't do a whole lot of lecturing. I don't do a whole lot of personal instruction. And just kind of let students, work through that. So make sure that it's right for your educational style and how you learn. Not everybody does well with that, and so I think sometimes students think, "Oh yeah, great, online," but it's not necessarily as great as you think it is, depending on what it is. I would also be very careful with taking a difficult subject online, such as math. If you know you're not good at math, don't take it online. Get the one-on-one instruction. Okay, any questions about online classes and what those look like? Okay. The other thing I wanted to talk about, I wanted to ask, does anybody have questions on how to use a syllabus? Everybody should have already gotten a syllabus by now. I know you've gotten one in my class and then in your other classes. Anybody have any questions about the syllabus? Okay, I didn't think so. Okay. Of course, you know that you need to attend class, right? Everybody's here, so that's great. They talked about your grade point average, how you calculate your grades. Now, mine are pretty much self-explanatory, but a lot of instructors can be a little bit weird about that. So make sure that you understand what percentage is counting for what. I did kind of want to go over the cumulative GPA and the program GPA and exactly what that and the difference there. So the cumulative GPA is your final GPA based on everything that you've done. Your program GPA is whether you've completed the AA and what that looks like. A lot of our early college students come to us and they have completed an AA and an AS just because it's convenient for them to do so. And so with that, they have program GPA for the AA and the AS, and then they have a cumulative GPA, which is all of that combined. Now, whenever we were talking earlier and during the semester about how institutions look at your grades and GPA with regard to admission, they're looking more at that cumulative GPA. So they want to see what it is based on everything. So like I have a GPA calculator that I can look at, and so I can say, okay, the student went to UNCW, they did 30 hours, they got a 2.5, but then they went to Gardner-Webb and did 15 hours and got a 1.2. So how is that going to weight? So the school that has the most hours earned, which would be the first institution, is going to hold more weight than the second institution, but still we're looking at it cumulatively. So what does all that come up to? And that's going to come to below a 2.0, which is not eligible for admission at a lot of institutions. So keep that in mind, because a lot of students get that mixed up. I'll have them asking me questions. Well, I got, a 3.5 or I got a 2 point whatever in my AA. Yeah, but your cumulative may not have been where it needed to be based on everything else that you've done. And that takes into consideration dual enrollment, early college coursework, any coursework that you may have done, pretty much anywhere. So if it's an accredited institution, and that's the other big thing, institutions have to be accredited. We do have students that go to non-accredited institutions, and so we can't take any of their credit, which is a pretty big deal, especially whenever they've earned various degrees or they've earned quite a bit of credit. The other thing to think about too is some institutions are still doing the quarter system. Now Appalachian doesn't, and none of the UNC institutions do. But I think some of the private institutions may still do the quarter system. And so if anybody's considering an institution, which I don't think you are, then that's something to consider. Okay, so Rosie, you had a question. Does your high school GPA get counted as your cumulative GPA? That's a really great question, Rosie, and no, it does not. So whenever you have your high school GPA, that is your high school GPA. You start over with your college GPA whenever you start a new institution. And that's another thing to consider is whenever you transfer, your courses transfer, but your GPA does not. So you get to start over fresh. So we look at that cumulative GPA for admission based on college coursework. And keep in mind that also getting the AA and the AS, things of that nature. So let me just move it off. Okay, so keep that in mind. So your high school GPA may be looked at for admission to the university if you don't have the hours needed to waive that, the 24 or the 30, but it's separate from your college GPA. Now, let's say you go to Caldwell and then you go to App State, and then App State's not the right one for you, and so you end up at ECU. So ECU would be looking at your Caldwell and App State GPA from a cumulative perspective in order for admission into their institution. Does that make sense? Okay, awesome. All right, Haley, that's fine. Thank you for letting me know. Let me mark you as here. Okay. All right, great question though. Okay, so any other questions about GPA? And the other thing, like, is that let me backtrack just 1 minute. There are some majors that do look at your cumulative transfer GPA for admission into that program specifically. Our BSN program, Bachelor's of Nursing, does that, and so does our comm departments. Communication just issued a new GPA that states that you have to have a 2.5 to be admitted into their program. But in order to help students, transfer students, they're allowing that transfer GPA to be taken into consideration. So it's that kind of something to consider. Sorry guys, my dog's barking. Hold on just a minute. Okay, so the joys of doing these classes at home is that you still have to deal with all those fun things like my dog barking in the background. Okay, so anyway, so let's move on a little bit farther. We talked about GPA. Obviously, let's talk a little bit about advising. All of you should have an advisor, hopefully, that you can go and talk to and can work through various things with you. Does everybody know who their advisor is? If you can either say yes or no or put it in the chat, that would be great. No, yeah. Okay, so we got some yeses and a lot of nos. I don't think they gave you a specific one. Okay, but did everybody meet with an advisor before, at some point in time for registration? Okay. All right, I'm gonna check on this because I thought that y'all were supposed to be assigned an advisor. So I'm gonna make a note to check on this for you guys and kind of see if I can figure out exactly what that's gonna look like. Now I know if you're gonna be doing the Aspire Appalachian that you are gonna be assigned an advisor because you're also gonna have me as an advisor. But let me check on who your advisors are supposed to be and what that's gonna look like for you, just for the simple fact that that's gonna be coming up probably in the next few weeks where they're gonna start requiring advising. Okay, so Francisco, you didn't meet with your advisor, but you know who it is. Okay, awesome. All right, so I'm going to check on that, and we're going to work through some of those no's and see what your advising is going to look like. I know they used to do some group advising, but Lee says we are supposed to have an advisor, but they aren't good at letting people know. All right, well, I'm going to check on that for all of you to make sure that you all are getting the advising that I would like for you to have. All right, thanks, Justin. And let me get Cole on there too. Okay. All right, so I'll work on that for you, and we'll work through your advising to make sure y'all are getting where you need to be, and work through that. Okay, because once you get to university, then you're going to be set. You're going to have a set advisor. Again, that depends on what institution you're going to be going to, but you know, most of you are planning on coming to Appalachian. So what will happen is your first registration as a new student, you'll go through what's called early registration advising. It's an online class that you take, and then you register yourself for your classes. But come orientation, you meet with an orientation advisor who goes over everything with you. Then once you declare your major, or you admit it, or are admitted into your program, depending on which that is, then you are assigned a program-specific advisor. So you kind of go through levels of advising depending on where you are within the pipeline of your degree completion. Okay, so, well, but I'll work on advising for y'all at the community college level too. Okay, so, all right, so let's talk a little bit more about, we're going to talk about the library. All right, let's talk a little bit about financial aid. Okay, Rosie, let's see. If you register for your own classes, who tells you which classes you need? So you go through, well, okay. So I help you through that a little bit. That's part of my position at Appalachian, is to kind of help you through that somewhat through early registration advising, and then I hand you off to what's called university college advising, and there's about 50 advisors in this department that work with various students. But early registration advising, the course itself, tells you how to take, how to look at your courses, look at your degree work. So right now y'all have what's called a PSPR. It kind of gives you an outline of what your degree looks like and what classes you need to take. At Appalachian and a lot of the institutions across the state, they have what's called degree works. Some places call it, you know, like I think Wilmington calls it the Seahawk portal, something like that. But it gives you an outline of what your degree is going to look like and the classes that you're going to need. It's not quite as prescriptive, but as a program of study can be, but it's definitely there to help you. And so that's what you and your advisor kind of work from. But we explain that to you in early registration advising, and then we are there to assist you, hopefully as much as we can. Okay. All right. But that comes after you're admitted. Keep that in mind. So all that is after you are admitted and you've gone through the whole admission process, getting all that done, then those are the next steps as far as that goes. Okay, so you got to get through this whole first part of getting through the community college, doing everything you need to here so that you can get admitted, and then we'll get to those steps. So that's not even anything you need to worry about. And I'll be there to help you through it all if you're going to Appalachian. All right, so let's talk a little bit about financial aid. I'm sure some of you are familiar with financial aid. I'm sure, and my husband's going to come in and talk a little bit more about this, but just as an overview, there is a difference between financial aid at the community college and financial aid at any of the four-year institutions or anywhere you're going to go. One, it's going to be more expensive at the institution. Now, depending on where you're going, we saw that whenever we were looking at our scavenger hunt, right? Various institutions costed more or less. Chapel Hill costed what, 20 grand, $27,000 a year. Appalachian costs just under $8,000 for your tuition and fees. $8,000. You know, we have a book rental. So the book rental allows you to rent your books so you don't have to buy your books. Not all institutions have that. Some of the other ones definitely require you to buy all of your books. So that has to go into effect. So what you got to think about is your cost of attendance. And so cost of attendance is how much it's going to cost you based on on everything. How much it's going to cost you to live, travel, food, what it takes you to live day to day, and then of course how much it's going to cost you to actually physically go to school. Your tuition and fees, buying your books. Do you need a computer? Do you need a print card? What do you need to be successful? So you have to think about that when you're thinking about financial aid. And again, my husband's going to come in and give you all the rundown and all that. He makes it sound a little bit scarier than it is, so I'm just going to give you all forewarning. But there are different things that you can do. First, you do have to do the FAFSA. He'll talk a little bit about that. And then, of course, you can get scholarships, work study grants, and loans. A lot of students get what's called the Pell Grant, and the Pell grants are free money. You can apply for grants, even if you don't qualify for the Pell Grant to get free money. They have all sorts of scholarships out there also. So you can definitely look into that. I will tell you that if the Pell Grant is paying for all of your community college tuition currently, it will not pay for all of your university tuition. The Pell Grant, I think, pays for about 2/3 of one semester tuition at Appalachian. And so that leaves students with about $1,200 to $1,500 that they have to come up with, either through loans, scholarships, or out of pocket. So something to consider whenever you're planning for the future and what that's going to look like. The other thing is whenever you're doing financial aid, you have to continue what's on satisfactory academic progress. This is a big one for students because basically what it means is that if you drop it down below the 2.0 and you are not making academic progress towards degree completion, they can cut your funding and they can say, we're not doing this anymore. And if they cut your funding and you can usually get put on probation for 1 semester. Second semester of probation is a little bit iffy depending on the department. There is no third semester of probation. So at that point, then you are withdrawn from the university and you either have to come back in under what we call a forgiveness policy. Institutions do it differently across the state as to how you can come back in. But of course, if you're having some sort of medical issue or family issue, and that's causing you to have issues getting schoolwork done and making it to class, then you need to talk with somebody about that because that's a total different type of withdrawal. That can be for medical withdrawal, family withdrawal, and then you come back, can be readmitted to the university under different standards. So things to consider when things are happening in life, because things do happen in life. I had to take a personal withdrawal 1 semester for various things that were happening with me. It did set me back a semester, but it was best for me to take that semester. So I did an academic withdrawal and then I came back. I wasn't in bad academic standing. I just came back the next semester feeling a little bit more refreshed and better able to finish out my degree. So nothing wrong with that, but just make sure that you are following the steps that need to be done so that you can come back in the way that you need to, and that you're dotting all the I's and crossing all the T's and making all that paperwork happen if it needs to happen, okay? All right. There's various services, obviously, across the university system. Academic counseling, career counseling, personal counseling, all that stuff's available. Health services, veteran services. One thing I did want to talk a little bit about whenever we're talking about the college experience is, really getting involved on campus. This is one thing that we see with community college students, and I think I've mentioned this before, is the fact that there's not a whole lot going on at the community college, so it's kind of difficult sometimes to put yourself out there whenever you get to the university. I think I may have told y'all this Quidditch story, but there's actually a Quidditch team at ASU's campus. I think I told y'all about that, and that's just one of the many sports and activities that we want you guys to get involved in. So make sure that you are getting involved in that whenever you get there and kind of understand what that campus culture looks like. Another thing is, before you commit to an institution, I would definitely say that you need to visit that institution. Now, a lot of you have probably been on Appalachian's campus, but if you're not planning to go to Appalachian, then I suggest that you make sure that you know what that campus culture is going to look like, because if it's not a good fit, you're not going to be successful. Okay, so any questions about that before we move on a little bit more to the next few weeks and what's happening there? Make sure I know we had a few people that came in, so make sure I've got everybody recorded. Hold on just a minute. Got Haley, Carson, all right, I think I got everybody. Awesome. Okay. All right, so let me get back to my drive here, and let's look at our assignments for the next coming weeks. I did want to let you guys know that I have been looking at your personal narratives and putting grades through Moodle in there. I'm still reading through those, and I'm very excited how much you guys have been willing to share with me. Thank you very, 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 very much. Let me share my screen again. All right, so I wanted to say again, thank you for that. I appreciate it. Y'all have been wonderful, and I will continue to work through those. So as I work through those, you'll see that I responded to those in red at the bottom of the page. So again, those have been very wonderful to read. I'm kind of getting to know you guys a little bit better. So again, very much appreciate that. So come next week, on the 17th, we will be having class in class. So we will be on Watauga campus, room 104. And we're going to talk a little bit more about what your personal narrative needs to look like with regard to this ePortfolio assignment, and then also kind of look at what Google Sites look like. So I haven't set up a Google site in a little while. I did it my last degree for a project, so I'm going to go back and refresh myself. So if any of you want to go ahead and look at that, you're more than welcome to, and we'll kind of talk a little bit more about what that ePortfolio is going to look like. I'm going to try to go ahead and get the rubric done, and then we're going to kind of look at a little bit more at what the personal narrative needs to look like for this assignment in particular. It's going to be a little bit more about your college experience and what that college and what you want this college experience to be, how you came to be here. It's not going to be super long, but it's going to be a little bit more specific. And then again, the Google Sites. And then September 19th, we'll discuss chapters 3 and 4. And what are chapters 3 and 4 on? So chapter 3 is wellness in college. That's a new chapter to this book, so we're going to have to look at that. And then chapter 4 is self-assessment. And so that's where we're going to be talking in the next week about CFNC. The CFNC has some personal self-assessments that we're going to be looking at. And so we're going to do those, and that's whenever my husband will come in and kind of look at those CFNC assessments. Now, I might move some of this a little bit so we can get some more of the personal narrative done in class, either probably on Tuesday. So we won't spend much time on the Google site, and then we'll go to work on the personal narrative. But if you wanted to go ahead and start some of that, I'll try to go ahead and get the rubric posted this weekend. So if you wanted to kind of have an outline and an idea of what that's going to look like, you can maybe get started on it if you have time, not a necessity, and then we can go from there. Okay, and again, there will be no class on September 24th. I will be traveling, I think, to Wake Tech that day to do some recruiting, so we will not have class on September 24th at all. But we will be in class on the 17th, physically in class. The 19th, next Thursday, we will have a Zoom meeting again. And then again, we will have no class on the 24th and class physically on the 26th. Okay? All right. Does anybody have any questions about any of that? Anything at all? All right. Okay. Well, everybody have a great weekend. I'm going to continue to work on your personal narratives. I'm going to try to get all of your grades updated probably in the next day or two. There's only 2 assignments on Moodle, and I think everybody's turned them in, and so that everybody should be getting A's on all of that. So if you have any questions about anything, you guys know how to reach me. You can email me, you can call me, you can stop by my office at App State, however we need to work through that. And as I find information out about your advising, I will let you guys know. Okay? Have a great weekend, everyone. I appreciate you guys being here.